Hi guys, if you can, there we go. Oh, it started. Okay. Sometimes I have to press start stream, and then start stream. And then sometimes I have to press start stream. And I don't have to press the other one. And there's no rhyme or reason. None. Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. We're good. Last stream didn't raise our blood pressure hardly at all. So we're good. We're going into OJ. Fine. Absolutely fine. Sound looks perfect. So here we go. And let's just triple check. Oh, you can't see. I am double checking right now that the playback speed is 1.25. And it is.
Mr. Harmon.
Why don't you describe the stains you identified on that later date?
At that particular point, there was some examination of the sock again. No numbers were actually assigned. No additional numbers were assigned at that particular point. That was just an examination of the socks.
Now, why didn't you find these new stains the last time?
The thing that's interesting about these socks is that the more time you spend with them, you really study them under the stereo microscope, you really do see a lot of stains on there. There's a large number of small stains on there, and it's only when you get under the stereo microscope that you can really appreciate how much there is.
So are you telling us that the stains that you identified on this later date you were not aware of the first time around?
The first time around, I saw that there were some other areas of interest, but I specifically focused on that one that I mentioned. But it was clear that there was a lot to look at on this sock.
Okay. In the course of your examination of these socks, did you have a videotape taken under infrared lighting conditions that demonstrated where stains were that were not apparent to you?
Yes, I did.
What date was that?
The actual videotaping was done on October 27th, 1994, with the assistance of Dusty Clark from the Bureau of Forensic Services latent prints section.
Now, at that point, let's stop the clock at that point. If you would you please identify by your lettering or your numbering system the stains that you were able to see before you did the video?
Some of the stains, excuse me, I actually noted, but I didn't assign numbers to until I actually sampled them. In other words, I make drawings and I say, look over here, there's something there, there's something there, there's something there, but I didn't actually assign numbers to them. So sometimes I notice things, and it's only when I go to sample it later that I have to give it a number.
Okay.
It's a somewhat complicated process.
Were you able to see stains in the video that you were not aware of?
I think the answer to that is no. I think most of those stains I had seen without the assistance of the video. The video is just a way to try to capture that information to document it.
Okay.
The contrast is the key there.
Okay, to just go back for a second, you mentioned these presumptive tests that you performed. The negative presumptive test was on the substrate control, is that right?
That's correct.
And positive presumptive tests were on stains that were ultimately tested.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, could I show People's Exhibits 214A and B on the Elmo? They've previously been marked. They're photos of the socks.
All right, proceed.
Mr. Sims, you recognize those photos?
Should I look at this one?
Yes.
Yes, I sure do. Those are my photographs.
Those are your photos?
Yes, they are.
And are those two separate photos, one of each of the two socks?
Yes, it needs a little focus, I think, on the writing. I can put that a little sharper for my...
Now, did you
Yes, I can see those
You
now.
can see it. For record-keeping purposes, did you identify one of those socks as sock A?
Yes.
Is that the one that had the two cutouts?
Yes.
And sock B is the other one?
Yes.
And 214, which one's on the left? Okay, the one that just moved there, that would be the 214B. Which sock is that a photo of?
That's sock B.
Okay.
That's the sock that's to the left of the display.
Sock to the left, and that's People's Exhibit 214B, and by default, 214A is sock 13A.
Yes.
And is that writing that's in those photos, is that writing that you placed on when you took those pictures?
Yes, it is.
And what does that writing attempt to depict?
It's an attempt to depict the relative locations of the particular stains that we actually sampled in this sock. It's not all the stains, but it's the ones that we typed.
So, and we'll go through that after lunch, these are actually what became stains that you processed for DNA typing in this case?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, I'd like you to think, Mr. Sims, about putting those socks on. I don't mean I'm going to ask you to put them on, but if you put one sock on one foot and one sock on the other foot.
Oh, for crying out loud. Shut up. Kelly, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I know there's two answers to this. The first way, you put them on, where would the stains all be on one side or the other of these socks? And maybe you ought to come out here and demonstrate to the jury what we're talking about. Let me ask you a preliminary question. You can't tell which one of those is the left.
Maybe the prosecution should have had OJ try on the socks instead. Hindsight, guys. Hindsight.
Sock and which one is the right sock. Is that right? So let's just assume you put one on your left, either one
Oh
on
my
your left
gosh.
foot, either one on
Randy.
your right foot. And we'll
Yes.
reverse it in a second.
He's
The key point is that the stain that's on the A sock that Matheson cut out is now being compared to those stains marked B1 and B2, which are on this surface of this sock. And the point is that given that the socks go in this direction to the toes, that those those stains would either be both on the outside or both on the inside.
Depending on which foot you put the sock on.
That's right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I think people in the back row didn't see the demonstration by Mr. Sims. So if you folks want to stand up, you're welcome to do so.
Okay, again, we're talking about that Matheson cutout stain, and we're talking about those stains B1 and B2. And the point is that given the orientation of the sock and where the toe would line, you would either have those stains both on the outside
He
or
does,
both on the
Donald.
inside.
He does.
All right, Mr. Harmon, I think at this point we'll take our break for the noon hour. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Do not form any opinions about the case. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you. Do not conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. We'll stand in recess until 1 p.m., and Mr. Sims, you may step down. All right, thank you. We'll be in recess.
Bigger and better things, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to do something you've afforded me the opportunity to do.
What is to be done is really the question.
Mr. Harmon,
I'm sorry,
what are you going to broach with this witness now, this time with regard to
I
the board?
just want him to look at it and identify handwriting and dates that were not on them when he sent those items back to LAPD in October.
This is,
He can testify to what he did when he packaged it up and sent it back to LAPD. What else is there is not really germane at this point. And what is this device that's here on the table here?
which device? I have a feeling this is, Howard, is this the digital camera?
All right, why don't we move that? All right, let's have the jury, please.
Your Honor, how am I going to tell the jury that they had this evidence and consumed part of it in testing?
They'll get that. All he can tell us is he can tell us what he had, what he packaged up and sent back.
Well, can you identify the package and that it's
Yes,
different?
he can identify the package. He can identify what he did.
Can I ask him what he didn't do? Put those other names and dates in?
Now, let's proceed.
Let's proceed. Not stop. Proceed. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer or a judge, but I think this is the opposite of proceed. But I didn't go to law school, so I'm wrong.
Stand, please. All right, let the record reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Gary Sims is again on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Harmon. Good afternoon, Mr. Sims. You're reminded, sir, you are still under oath, and Mr. Harmon, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sims, I think I was a little confused on what a fibril is. I'd like to mark as people's next in order a photograph supplied by Mr. Sims that shows some black cutout material and what I know are fibrils now in the background. May that be
People's 266.
266? And may I put that on the Elmo, Your Honor?
Yes, you've shown it to counsel.
Yes, I have.
Donald, I love that game.
And Mr. Sims,
I
do you
love
recognize
playing that
People's
game.
266 for identification?
Yes, I do. That's a photograph that I took on October 4th, 1994.
Okay, and we were talking about fibrils. Can you describe where these fibrils are in that white background in the photograph?
Yes. I need a moment on, do I use this device?
Sure, go ahead.
What I'm describing is there's some very fine traces.
Mr. Sims, why don't you try this one?
Okay.
He was so excited to use that little pen.
Come out, yeah.
He was so excited to use that.
Put it on the podium.
Mods, I love Sims mods. I love them. I just love them. All of them. All 3 billion of them. If they crash your computer so hard, it's fine.
We were talking about fibrils, and what I'm referring to are these little fine pieces of fiber. And as most of you have probably seen from common experience, when you cut a piece of cloth, especially this type of cloth, this weave, some of the little fibrils actually come off from the cloth. So these are the 4 swatches that were present in that tube from Greg Matheson that was submitted along with the sock. Now, DNA 42 is my number. 13 is the LAPD number. The tube is called 13A, and what I'm talking about when I say fibrils are these little minute pieces that are present, and they come about when you cut the fabric.
Okay, and you also described some minute particles of blood.
Yes, the particles are generally associated with these particular fibrils.
And what causes the particles to come off?
Well, the particles are usually adhering. That's the blood that's adhering to the actual fiber, or fibril,
To the fibrils.
to the fibrils, yes.
And so is it the cutting of the fabric that causes the blood particles to come off?
Sustain. Raise a question.
What is it that causes the tiny blood particles to come off with the fibrils?
Well, the blood is adhering to the fibrils, and then, of course, some of it also powders itself. So that's the combination of material down in here. And this is on a white piece of filter paper in the laboratory so that you can clearly see it.
And this morning when you said that should be obvious on a white background, is it the combination of the fibrils with the cut fabric and the blood particles?
No, I'm sure
Yes,
that's
what I'm saying is once you
Fibettes.
cut this fabric and you then have it on a white background, you can see these particles.
Okay,
And that you really wouldn't see them until you start cutting the fabric.
okay, you can go back up and resume your seat.
I can't say, Donald, because there's assholes
Mr. Harmon,
watching
how do
my
you feel the
stream.
resolution is on the big screen?
Well, I can see it with these glasses on. I'm not sure how the jury.
All right. I was going to give you the option to pass the actual photograph through the jury if you wanted to.
Be fine, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. If you'll hand that to juror number 1. Since we're looking at very fine particles on the photograph.
All work should be illegal. I wish I had a food truck. That wouldn't be work. That would be fun. I would stream it. I would have a camera in my food truck, and I would stream it. I would. That would be so much fun. Oh, they won the lottery when they picked me. Let me just tell you. Yeah, food vibes.
You return that to Mr. Harmon, please.
Mr. Sims, before the break, we had discussed a little bit this infrared video that you had taken of the SOX 13 to try to identify possible blood stains. Why is it that you resorted to infrared lighting to try to find these stains or identify these stains?
Nothing on TV, movies, radios, podcasts, any of it matches the entertainment of a restaurant, of food service. Because people are so people. And when it comes to food, so like if you think about other types of retail where people go and buy things, clothing, cars, jewelry, blah, 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 people are people. But when it comes to food and alcohol, people are people, people, people. And yeah, and it's pure 100% entertainment from open to close. It doesn't end. Even when there's no people there, it's entertainment.
Well, the video was not so much for the finding them. That to me is much
Come to my food truck for legal advice and coffee. I love that.
better done through the stereo microscope, that type of examination. The point of this was for the documentation of showing exactly where those stains were and using the contrast enhancement from the IR photography.
Okay, we'll show that tape in a moment, but what I'd like you to do is think back to the point where you were visualizing, where you were visually examining the sock. And what I'd like you to explain is how many stains are visible on the video, the infrared video that we'll be marking, that were not apparent to you in your initial visual examination.
There were several.
Okay. Could we have marked as people's next in order, as people's 267 for identification, the infrared video of item 13, the socks, Your Honor?
People's 267.
We can't. I have to close this stream down because Bill just put a members only a members only video out 15 minutes ago. Oh, it's Judge O'Donnell. Oh yes. Whoo. Good job, Bill. I can't wait to watch that.
We've given copies of that to the defense. Can we show that right now? Mr. Sims, I know it's kind of lengthy. Would you stop it at the appropriate time when it depicts enough of what you saw there?
Yes.
Is that okay? May we
Right,
do
how
that?
long is this video, Mr. Harmon?
How long is the part
About 15 minutes.
would you like me to sing with it?
Yes.
I would.
Sustained.
I would too. I would.
That could be sanctioned for it.
We agree.
All right, let's.
I'm sorry.
Let's see the videotape.
Your Honor, can I point out one thing as we're going to show this videotape?
What is that, Mr.
I just want to point out that this is not a test for blood per se. What we're doing is using it as a contrast.
All right. Mr. Harmon.
Could we start that?
No.
All right, Mr. Sims, you can either look at the small monitor or watch the large monitor.
Are we watching a 15-minute video with no sound? How? No, we're not. No, we're not.
Mrs. Robertson, cut one bank, would you please?
In the upper portion of the video, one can now see one of the stains where there was an arrow. Now we're just sort of moving along. This first part of this is just sort of a run through.
The witness knows he identify which of the two socks by number this is.
Yes.
This should be 42, number A, sock A.
This is number A, guys. Yep, I got the
There's an area
speed
down there
up.
near my thumb that's of interest.
see an area that you ultimately identified and tested as a blood stain. Could you please point that out to us?
That, yeah, this is the next part. If we stop right here,
Or is this the next?
Mr. Sims, which sock is this?
this is still A, sock A.
Right.
So if we stop right here, this is on the side that is actually the same side as which the LAPD cutout was on. This is up near the top of the sock, and I did additional testing and on this stain near the top there that I identified as stain A3.
And we actually have photos that show exactly where those stains are that we'll get to in a little while. Is that correct?
Yes, and one can see that there are 3 areas of interest in this particular area. 3
Okay.
stains of interest.
Okay. You want to start? Can you
Yes.
start it again?
Now we can just start to see the LAPD cutout area, their stain.
There, that kind of rectangular area?
Yes, the rectangular area, and you can, excuse me.
Back it up just slightly.
That, can you rewind that just slightly?
Back.
If you rewind that just slightly, we can show where there. I think right in the middle now, you can see the LAPD cutout. You can see their arrow down at the bottom of the screen there. It looks like 13A is what their arrow is designated with.
And it looks like there's a darkened area around the cutout.
Yes, there is still some staining around the periphery of that cutout. You can see that under stereo microscopy.
Even after all of your testing.
Yes, I didn't do any testing other than examining that particular area.
Okay.
And then these are some areas that are not associated as blood stains. They may be some soil deposits, that sort of thing.
Those darkened areas?
Yes. And there's the control by LAPD that we just passed by.
Okay.
And again, now we're moving up to the top of the sock and looking at those stains in that area. There's
Are
one
we
that's sort of
watching-
near the top now. It sort of
Wait.
has a teardrop shape.
Is there a 15-minute video on this sock? Is that what we're watching? Come on. No. Come on. We can't be. Is that what's happening?
Going to the left of the screen. That was the
I'm
one that I
sorry,
designated
guys.
A3.
I didn't know. Listen, if I knew there was a 15-minute video of a sock, I would have never started this whole project. Never, never, never.
Now, are we switching over to the other sock now?
No, this is now the same sock. If you stop it right there, it's the opposite side. So this is still sock A, but this is that other stain that LAPD apparently had drawn the arrow to that I mentioned earlier on, and this is stain A2. So this is also up near the top. It's in the same area as this A3 generally, but it's on the opposite side of the sock.
Okay. We start it again?
Yes.
But wait, we also have a hat. Don't forget the hat.
Now, what are we looking at? Is this still?
This is again the LAPD cutout. So this would be the opposite side.
This is still sock A.
Still sock A.
Now we're watching a
And you did
15-minute
not
video
cut
of a
any
sock, and we
further
have to
around
look
the
at
cutout
him
that
while
Greg
we do
Matheson
it.
made.
That's correct. And again, moving up now, you can see A3 has come into the picture. And there's 2 other areas associated with
I
that.
think it was
General
Nicole's,
area there. 2 other stains, I should say.
but not Ron's. That's on the sock.
And that's just telling you that the first minutes of this were all 42A. This is telling you what you just saw as opposed to what you're going to see. So now we're going to move on to the B sock. And it's as you move down into the center of this that you pick up the stain, excuse me, that I called B1. There we can start to see one of the stains in the middle. And then you can see another stain towards the upper left there. Another little stain. And this is an area that has a lot of very small stains associated with it.
About how many?
I'd have to count them, but I think maybe 10 or so, something like that. But I actually have detailed notes about that also. You can see on the, if you go back, can we rewind just a little bit, please? That's good. It's hard to see, but this 42B1 stain had been outlined somewhat by LAPD, and sometimes on this you can pick up the outline. And there's a darkened area down at the bottom. That doesn't look like blood at all. That little dark spot, that's,
Even though it looks pretty dark there?
yes, that's not.
Are those socks black or navy blue?
I describe them as black.
Could they be navy blue?
Well, sometimes I grab the wrong ones out of the drawer, but I think they're black. You can see now there's some
Okay, who thinks
other
he
little
grabs
stains
the
showing
wrong
up in this
socks
area.
Ever. Never.
They're just little dark patches. The one that's on the far right now, that's the one that I designated as B2. That's stain B2. So we've got B1 and B2 in this general area. Now we're moving in for a close-up. The one on the upper right there is
He doesn't
B1.
even have his masters.
B2
He's
is now
finishing his masters
gone out of
right
the
now.
picture a little bit.
I don't know. I think he dressed himself because of the tie. The
So
tie, I
there's
think,
B2
is
now,
a
right in the
normal
middle. It's
tie.
sort of a flattened oval right in the
But I
middle
think
towards
when
the
he
bottom there.
picked it out,
And notice
he
there's
was
some other
like,
darkened areas
"Oh,
around
this
that.
one's exciting." Wait till he turns around. If you don't remember his tie, it's black and white with a little
On these
design.
socks, there's a very distinctive logo
probably
that I
thought,
noticed
"Oh,
that's in the fabric, and
This
that's
is exciting.
that's
This
seen
tie's
real well
going
now
to
in
be
the middle.
perfect. And it's great. It's a great tie.
it gives you a nice reference point for each one of these little areas.
What that logo is, Mr. Sims?
I've never seen that brand logo before. That's just my tag right there. Says it's 42B.
Okay, up to this point, have we seen all the stains that are visible on B?
Yes, there's just briefly. I think there's an examination now of the opposite side of this. Again, there's B2, B1 up on the upper left. This is again that area with B1 and B2. This is at the time we were interested, of course, in this stain. As I mentioned, it turned out to be not a blood stain, but
How did you make that determination?
that examination was done under the stereo microscope, I believe.
Okay. So have we seen everything now on SOC B?
You've probably seen enough. There's a little more maybe on the opposite side of SOC B. If we want to just look at this briefly. The staining in this particular side, on this particular side, is much more subtle than it was on the other side of SOC B.
How many small stains in total were there on SOC B?
On SOC B, we can probably stop the video now if you want.
We can stop the video now if you want. We want.
I count about 19, something like that I saw. Yes, that's approximately.
Mr. Harmon.
Let's talk about SOC A for a second. Of the stains that you identified and numbered on SOC A, how many of them actually appeared visible from the inside of the sock?
From the inside
Good
of the
night,
sock?
Beck,
Did
my
you examine them
love.
from the inside at all?
Good night.
I peeled back a little bit around the top, as I recall, but I never totally reflexed the sock.
So you can't add anything to that?
I don't really think I can add anything to that, other than I did photograph, I recall, the area under the LAPD cutout, for example, and I did look around in the areas where I cut, and I made some notes about that.
Okay, well, of the areas that you cut, why don't you describe whether or not the blood soaked through to the other side?
On page 115, this is with regards to the LAPD cutout area, stain A1. I made a note that under the stereo microscope, the area below the other side of the sock, the inner
That's a
surface
quick
shows relatively
turnaround,
few
Terry.
specks of reddish brown, so what I call powdering, and no indication seen of soaking through to other side. I made a photograph of that. Still some good quantity of staining around margins of 42A1. I made a similar notation with regards to stain 42A2. Now, that's on the opposite side, up near the top. This is page 113. Stereo review, cut site, and stereo review means stereo microscope. Still good reddish brown on the edges. Note some powdering on surface below. Consider too if any wicking if wet. Just see reddish brown beads. That's all I say about that.
Certainly. Mr. Simpson, if you'll show Mr. Schick where in your notes you found that. All right, Mr. Harmon.
Mr. Sims, maybe I can cut this a little bit short.
All right,
Was
what's your
there-
plea?
Let's focus on 13A, where the cutout was from.
Yes.
Was there any corresponding stain on the opposite side of the sock from where the cutout was made from 13A1?
There was nothing that I noted that made it look like it had soaked through to that side, no.
When I mean to the other side of the sock.
Oh, I don't recall seeing anything in that area, no. Certainly nothing that corresponded with that large stain.
Well, do you want to examine when we looked at that video, did it look like there was a stain on the opposite side?
Video speaks for itself. Or will.
I'm sorry, your question was?
Imagine the sock A is flat,
Yes,
and the area where 13A1 was cut out from was located.
yes.
Was there any stain on the opposite side, the opposite wall of the sock, in the same location which corresponds to 13A1?
Now, when you say opposite side, you mean the opposite outer surface?
Right.
Yes, I did not detect anything in that particular area, no.
Okay. Okay, well, we're going to have the photos up in a little bit. Why don't we move on to another item that you examined, the Rockingham glove, LAPD item 9.
Okay.
When was it that you first got that glove?
This is item number 9?
Yes.
Number 9? Yes.
Mhm.
That was received on September 7th, 1994.
And when did you begin to process that glove?
The processing of the glove began on October 15th of 1994.
And over how long a period did your examination of that glove take?
Over about a month.
Essentially, were there two major periods of investigation and sampling of that glove?
Yes.
Rather than break them down into separate periods, let's just describe the condition of the glove when it first came into your possession.
Yes. It was in a sealed condition by it had an LAPD seal on it. It was presented to us when I removed it from the envelope. It was inside out.
Mr. Sims, which page of your notes are you referring to?
I'm on now page 69.
All right, thank you.
It was inside out?
Yes, it was inside out.
Your Honor, may I have marked as people's next in order 4 photographs? May they be 268A and B, which are photographs of the glove inside out?
Yes, 268A and B.
I've already shown them to counsel. And 268C and D of the glove right side out.
All right. C and D.
Mr. Sims, are the photographs that I'm about to show ones that you took yourself?
Yes, they are.
Can I put A on the Elmo, Your Honor?
You may.
Hoodie and sweaters, yes.
Mr.
Hot
Sims, you
chocolate.
recognize that as a photograph you took of the inside of the glove from Rockingham, LAPD item number 9?
I recognize that as that. Yes.
Okay, perhaps side by side, may we put 268B, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, are those both sides of the inside of that glove as it was inside out?
Yes, it is, and you have to remember now this is inside out. It's a right-hand glove. The easiest thing to note is where the thumb position is, and then also if you look at that little notch on the right side to the lower right, where near the initial CY, that's the what I would call the palmar surface.
So the glove, if worn on the right hand, the notch would be by the inside of your wrist?
Yes,
Not
Not the
show
back of your hand.
gloves.
that's correct.
Okay. How did you go about trying to sample this glove when it was presented to you inside out as it was?
Well, I figured since it was inside out, I might as well start with it inside out. The other thing that was interesting was that I thought it would perhaps be easier to sample and get results from this sort of material that's on the inside, this lining surface, rather than the leather that's associated with the outer surface.
Why is that?
Well, in general, leather can cause problems, and also I figured that if there was any kind of soil or contamination of that sort on the outside, that it would be less likely to have that on the inside.
Okay, when you say leather can cause problems, can you give a little more of an explanation than that?
Yes, leather as a substrate or a surface on which blood stain is deposited sometimes is a difficult material to work with because it causes problems with the test. Not that it gives you a wrong result, but just that you can't get a result. In other words, you can't get one of these PCR amplifications to occur, or you can't get your restriction enzyme to restrict if you're doing RFLP.
Okay. So what did you see when you began examining the inside of the glove?
I saw a lot of reddish staining all over the inside of the glove.
And did you sample the inside of that glove?
Yes, I did.
And how many areas did you sample the inside of that glove from?
The areas that first of all, I tested several areas using a presumptive blood test. Not all of those areas were actually sampled for additional analysis.
So not all the areas that gave you presumptive positives were sampled for analysis?
That's correct. And what I did is I assigned a number, like a G1, G2, et cetera, to these various stains that I tested in any fashion.
And how many areas from the inside of the glove did you sample for testing?
It's the first examination, it went G1 up to G8. So 8.
Okay, and of all the stains that you sampled, did you ultimately test every one of them?
No.
Why not?
Well, some of them, when we're saying sampling, I mean doing any kind of a test on, such as a presumptive test. The ones that I actually cut out, I did test. Yes.
Okay, of the ones that gave the presumptive positive results, why didn't you test them?
I wanted to take what I thought might be a representative sampling. There's still a lot of material on that glove that I never got to, obviously. But
Okay. Now, at some point then, did you turn the glove right side out and examine the outside of the glove?
yes,
Your Honor, may I put 268 C and D on the Elmo at this point?
Yes.
the one
Go ahead.
the one other point I wanted to make that I believe before we actually turned it inside or right side out, there were two additional stains or two additional samples in the notch area that were investigated.
When you say the notch area, is that on the lining or the leather part?
That's on this would be on the lining. I'm sorry, the lining part. Yes, when it's still inside out.
When it's still inside out?
Yes,
Okay, and then you turned it right side out
yes,
and sampled the outside?
yes.
Okay, and actually, did you do these examinations and samplings in two different groups?
Yes. Although the first, I mentioned the 8 plus the 2, that's a total of 10 when it's still inside out, and then it's later that it's turned right side out.
Okay, and how many samplings did you make of the glove on the outside?
On the outside, there were 4 in this latter set, but one of them was actually still back on the inside, down in that wrist.
I would show the therapist the video I am looping, and my therapist would say, "Nah, you're right."
area.
Okay, were you operating
He
under
is,
some kind of time
Chinny.
constraints
But
at
if
that
you
point?
ignore him, it goes
Not
faster.
in the latter stages,
Oh, yeah.
but in the October 15th and 16th sampling, yes, we were operating under time constraints.
And what was that?
Well, we were looking at a possible cutoff of any testing.
Okay. Was Dr. Blake present during the samplings of these items as he was during the other items you've already described?
Yes, he was.
Took his own photos?
Yes, he did.
Just so you know, in case you're not paying attention, the defense is saying they didn't have any access to any of the evidence. They didn't see any of the testing. Dr. Blake is always there, always watching for the defense.
No.
I have an objection to
Noted.
what I did.
Proceed.
Ron, I'm going to be moving to the nail board that has some photos of Nicole on it. Exhibit number 220 I wanted to move on to.
All right.
I'll be back, guys. I'll be back.
The one with the nail scrapings and clippings on it.
All right, let's move the easel over here.
Sims, you received items 84A and B, LAPD items at some point?
Yes, I did.
And what date was that?
That was on September 26, 1994.
And you gave them, as you have with all of these, your own item numbers?
Yes, I did.
And if you would, I'd like you to take a look at People's Exhibit 220 for identification, specifically the top 5 photos. I'd like you to look at them and see if those are photos that you took during your examination and sampling of these items, the 84A and B.
Yes, I took the fingernail scrapings and clippings photographs. I obviously did not take the crime scene photographs bottom there.
Okay. Why don't we just break them down by right-hand clippings, left-hand clippings, if you would, or perhaps why don't we just start out by listing what you call the right-hand clippings and the right-hand scrapings, and the left-hand clippings and the left-hand scrapings.
Okay. The right-hand clippings, which are actually where the coroner takes these clippings and actually clips off the ends of the nails. That's 45A by my numbering system. And then the right-hand scrapings are 45B, and that's actually where a wooden stick is used to scrape under the nails to collect those deposits, those outer deposits under the fingernails. And then on the left side, you can see the left-hand fingernail clippings. I designated those as 46A. Again, you can see the cut-off nails. There's actually 6 pieces of fingernail in there. And then the left-hand fingernail scrapings is debris with the wooden stick. That is 46B by my designation.
Okay. Using the LAPD conventional numbers, 84A and B, if you will, did you examine 84A, the clippings?
Yes, I did.
And that's actually your 46.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Will you describe what you observed when you opened those sealed packages and examined them?
Okay, now this is for our, it might be easier also if we refer to left and right.
Okay, why don't we do left-hand clippings then?
And this is on page 154 of my notes.
All right, proceed. Thank you, counsel.
The, starting with the left hand, which is actually opposite of the way I started. I'll look at the left here. I noted that on these clippings that there was what I felt was significantly less blood than on the right hand clippings. You can see in the photograph there.
How many, and does the photograph actually depict the nail clippings and fragments thereof that were in that package?
Yes, that photograph does. They're placed, this blue thing, you see, this blue container is what we call a little plastic weighbow, and so they're put in this weighbow so that they can be photographed in that manner and documented in that fashion.
Now, there are actually 6 fragments in that little
Yes,
blue
I know
tray.
that the 4 of these are actually nail tips, and then there were just 2 other fragments. I'm not sure. I didn't go back and try to put them all together.
Okay. And I believe you just said you noticed there was less blood in the clippings from the left hand than there was in the right hand.
Yes, and I think that's...
Okay. Then we'll talk about the right hand in a second. How about the scrapings?
Okay, on the left-hand fingernail scrapings, I noted that the bindle contained a portion of a wooden stick along with some small particulate debris. You can see small particulate debris, those little dots along that fold of the bindle right there.
And did you actually end up sampling the scrapings, that little particulate debris?
Yes, I did. I later did that actual sampling. The other thing I wanted to point out was that on this left-hand fingernail scrapings, one doesn't see the type of wiping marks that you do see on the right-hand fingernail scrapings. You'll notice the bindle here is fairly clean as far as any wipe marks, whereas there's white marks present on the right-hand fingernail scrapings. And I noted that.
Okay. Let's shift to the right hand, if you will. Let's start with the right hand clippings.
Can I make one more comment on that?
Sure. Do you have another comment about the left hand?
The left hand, the comment I wanted to make was that I looked at those under the stereo microscope. It looked to me like there were some blood particles and some debris. I noted some whitish pieces that looked like these nails. I don't know much about fingernails, but I think this is a French manicure or something like that.
Now, move to strike this interesting observation.
All right. Curious to disregard Mr. Sims' comments about French.
Yes,
Manicure.
That's fine, Your Honor. I didn't. I just noted that there were some particles that may have been from this material, this nail-like material.
Okay. Let's move over to the right hand, if you would, and let's describe your initial examination of those clippings.
My first observation was that excuse me, there are 5 fingernail clippings. It looked like there was apparent blood on all 5 of them. And what I did is I placed them in a weigh boat and I numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I could describe what I was doing with them. Again, I noticed these, the whitish tips.
Anything else attract your attention when you examined those clippings?
I noted that there was a possible hair associated with those. It was about 2 centimeters long.
And where was that?
So that was just associated with the clippings.
Okay. And anything else with respect to the right hand clippings?
Of particular interest, there was what I thought might be a piece of tissue on the largest nail on the inside surface.
Now,
And-
I'm sorry.
Well, when I'm looking at this type of evidence, what I'm really keying on is to try to see if there's anything that looks like tissue. Because frequently in this type of case, you see blood. It's not at all unusual to see, if there's that kind of a homicide, it's not unusual to see blood under fingernails. But what I'm really keying on is looking for something that's foreign. And that's why I'd be looking for any sort of tissue.
Why would tissue be of interest?
Tissue would be of interest because if one is scratched by nails, and I've had this done to me by my big sister when I was younger, but you get some of the skin actually reflected off as you scrape it, and so some of this epidermis comes off, and some of the dermis even actually can come off onto the fingernails, and that's where it can get trapped underneath.
And so at one point you saw something that you thought was tissue on the right hand clippings?
Yes, I just called it possible tissue. I just noted that it was suspicious, and I thought it deserved further attention.
Now, is that, in your examination of either set of clippings, is that the only item, the only particle that you thought might be tissue that you
Yes.
observed?
Yes, that was the only thing that caught my eye.
Okay, and could you point out which nail clipping it was that you thought there might be tissue?
Yes, it was the one designated number 1,
So the upper one, actually in
the largest
the largest one at the top.
at the top. Yes.
And what did you do to pursue the possibility that might be tissue?
I removed that particular sample, and I actually extracted it, and I also, I did another very simple test, which was just to poke at it, and it turns out to be a sort of a hard material, suggesting to me that it probably wasn't tissue, it was more likely this nail-like substance. But I extracted it as if there might be DNA in there of sufficient or significant quantity, because if it is tissue, it should be loaded with DNA.
So is it well known to you that tissue has significantly more DNA than blood does?
Yes, it does, because the tissue cells are generally nucleated, especially if you get into the dermal layers. That's what you're really looking at. Whereas blood, the DNA comes only from the white cells, which are not the major component of blood.
Okay, and so you determined to your satisfaction that it was not tissue.
Yes, through my testing, I determined that I didn't believe it was tissue.
Based on your examination of these clippings as you've described them so far, because you found no tissue, did you observe any evidence that Nicole Brown scratched anyone?
Objection. Close for speculation.
Sustained.
Did you number that possible tissue? Did you assign a sample number to it?
Yes, I did.
What item number was that?
That was 45A-1A.
And then, because at that point you thought there might be tissue there, did you identify some nearby blood that you ultimately tested through this process?
Yes, what I wanted to do was to test some of the blood that was nearby that, very close in proximity. So I took some of that also, and that was designated 45A1B.
As a forensic scientist, what's the significance to you in a homicide like this where blood's under the fingernail to not finding any tissue under any of the nails of the victim?
Well, I would just have to say that if there's no evidence found of that sort of type, of that tissue type, then there's just no evidence of that. I can't say that something didn't happen, but there's no evidence of it.
Okay. Okay, so we've identified 45A1A, these are your numbers, as the possible tissue, and 45A1B as the blood near that possible tissue.
Yes.
Now, what about the right-hand scrapings? Would you please explain to the jury what you noted when you examined the package and contents of the right-hand scrapings?
The right-hand scrapings, I noted that there was this wiping that I mentioned earlier on the bindle.
Would that suggest to you that that material was wet when it was wiped on there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I looked again under the stereo microscope at this particular area. I didn't find anything that looked like tissue to me at that point. And that was where I left the first part of this examination.
How would you compare, just to your visual examination, the relative amounts of the scraping possible blood particles of the right hand versus the left hand?
Well, there was more of this sort of loose debris in the left hand, but there's more material if you take into account the wipes on the right hand, perhaps.
Now, ultimately, how many samples did you cause to be subjected to the PCR DNA typing process that you'll describe soon? How many of these samples?
Yes, I took a total of 4 samples for extraction. One of these was some of this material. Another one was some of this material.
Okay, you're talking about the
right-hand fingernail
scrapings.
scrapings, left-hand fingernail scrapings, the possible tissue from up here, and then the nearby blood from up here. And then after that extraction and evaluation, I actually didn't do anything more with that possible tissue because, in my opinion, it wasn't tissue. So there were 3, I believe, that were pursued.
Okay, we'll talk about the typing in a little while, but at some point after your typing on these samples was completed, did you send extracted DNA from those 3 samples to Cellmark Diagnostics?
Yes, I did.
Why didn't you test every nail clip?
Well, I didn't think that would be particularly productive. It's a great deal of work to do. That was the main reason. And certainly it's still there if anybody wants to test it.
So whatever you did not sample, whatever is visible in those pictures is there for anyone to test in regard to this case?
Yes.
Okay, we're done with that board.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before we actually describe your testing procedures, I'd like to go over the samples which were in your possession from which you removed samples for testing and what remained of those items for anyone, including the defense in this case, to test. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, now, this morning we went through 10 items that were never tested for
Yes.
by you.
That's correct.
And were those all sent back to the Los Angeles Police Department?
Yes,
You didn't sample them?
that's correct. Those I didn't even open the envelopes.
Now, just to step back from that for a second, whenever you returned items to the Los Angeles Police Department, did you always seal them before you sent them back?
Yes, I did. I did. And in fact, I sealed things at the end of my examinations.
Okay. And then if they were put in a larger package, that would be sealed too?
Yes.
And in that same regard, whenever you sent things to the FBI or to Cellmark, were they always in a sealed condition?
Yes.
Okay, but why don't we go through, starting with the lowest numbers, and if you would, describe how much of each item, or if you can, I may need to, if you want, I can direct you to a page number. What's the lowest number that you tested?
Object to this presentation.
Let me see counsel sidebar. Hold on, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
What is the total number of items, including substrate controls, that your lab tested in any way?
This would be the number of items that we actually extracted. It's something like 108 samples, including the substrate controls.
Okay. And rather than go through item by item on what was conserved to speed things up, can you tell us, of those items, how many of those items were actually totally consumed in the testing?
Yes, I can tell you that. I need a moment to count, but I can tell you that fairly quickly.
I think we need to know which ones, not just the number.
And when you give us the number, if you could identify the items too.
The items that, now these are the ones where we consumed the sample. This would be item number 113, which relates to a hair.
Your numbers are LAPD numbers.
These are LAPD numbers. Okay, so that was item number 113, which relates to a hair. Item number 115, I think that's one of the rear gate blood stains. Item number 116, a second rear gate blood stain. I believe that's it. I think even on the glove and the sock, there were still some traces, I know, in those general areas that we sampled. There was one area on the glove that we thought was tissue that was consumed.
Okay. And that proved not to be tissue, is that true?
No, on the glove, it indicated
sorry.
to me that it was tissue.
In addition to, these are actually the swatch items or the initial evidence items. In addition to those items, is there also extracted DNA left over from many of these items?
Well, yes, most of these items there is extracted DNA. And for example, when I mentioned 115 and 116, those are those rear gate samples. There's extracted DNA from those left over. I think we mentioned the hair. The hair we haven't talked about earlier, but that work was done by Stephen Myers in our laboratory, and he did not detect any DNA in that extract. So that extract still remains. We didn't do any typing of that sample.
Okay, and as an example of what one can do with extracted DNA, is that what you sent to Cellmark for their analyses on 13A1, the cutting from the sock,
That would be an example of that sort of approach.
and 29, the steering wheel stain?
Yes,
And 84, the 3 nail kit items?
yes.
So is it possible to do additional testing with that extracted DNA if one were to try to confirm results?
Certainly.
And in addition to extracted DNA, is there also something, the jury's heard from Dr. Cotton on these processes, amplified DNA that's as a result of the PCR process after DNA is amplified?
Yes, on almost all of these samples, in fact, there should be amplified DNA left over that is now residing in our PCR product room.
And as a forensic scientist, do you feel that the best check on your analytical reliability is reanalysis of the evidence?
Sustain.
Do you feel that it is possible to validate?
Sustain. Why don't you rephrase the question?
Sure. What could be done with you as a forensic scientist? You've got considerable experience before you work for DOJ. What could one do with remaining swatch, let's say from the same item?
Overruled.
What could one do with a remaining swatch, some extracted DNA, and some amplified DNA?
It's not specific.
Overruled.
Well, let's
You can answer the question.
work backwards. With the amplified DNA, one has the PCR product all ready to go, so one could actually test that. To me, that's probably not the most useful. Then the next approach would be to look at the extracted DNA, and one could take that DNA and either run it through the same types of tests that we ran in our laboratory, or run it in additional genetic marker DNA tests to gain more genetic information about a particular sample. Then one takes a further step back to the actual raw sample, the raw swatch itself, and certainly one can do one's own extraction and work on that material.
And is that just your opinion, or have you relied on the opinions of others in the forensic science field?
Sustain.
Have you relied on any published literature in that area?
Sustain. Let's move on from this area. You've established it's available for other corroboration.
All right, Mr. Sims, we've covered how you sampled and evaluated some but not all of the items. And I'd like you to explain your problem-solving approach. Your lab provides both RFLP and PCR services, is that true?
Yes.
And, for example, when this case was submitted to you with the first batch of stains, what was your initial plan what sort of test did you want to perform on those stains?
Well, initially, we thought this might be an RFLP case all the way, and our initial involvement in this case was very limited. If you would like, I can go into a little bit of that history.
That's okay. Is that okay, Your Honor? Go ahead.
No, I don't want to hear history. I want to hear
okay.
facts.
Okay.
All right. Initial testing plan was RFLP. Apparently
Okay.
that didn't happen.
Yes, initially we were planning to just look at a very few number of samples and to do RFLP testing in this particular case. As it turned out, some of those initial samples turned out to be in a degraded state and not suitable for RFLP analysis. And in particular, that would be the Bundy drops that we looked at in that initial series.
So is it fair to say that RFLP would have been the preferred approach if there was enough DNA and it was intact?
Yes, I think so, because the RFLP test is more discriminating. You have a much better chance of excluding somebody who's not really the source of those samples.
And at what point do these samples actually flow through the same process in the beginning and then branch out depending on how much DNA and how intact it is?
Yes, what we do is we do the initial extraction of the sample, and then we evaluate it to see whether or not we should proceed with the RFLP or the PCR approach.
And do you use the same extraction technique for both methods?
Yes, in our laboratory we do.
Okay. Do you have written protocols in your laboratory for performing RFLP in your lab?
Yes, we do.
And are those protocols based on the scientific literature?
Yes, they are.
Are there a number of ways to perform RFLP analyses?
There are variations on the theme. I mean, it's basically the same process, but different laboratories use, for example, different restriction enzymes. That's the enzyme that cuts the DNA at a specific site. And also, different laboratories use different probes to look at different sites of genetic variation in the DNA.
Okay. If you will, can we just compare the system that you have with the system in place at the FBI? Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
And how does your system compare with the FBI system?
It's
I think there's a relevancy problem.
Sustained.
Can I make it, it relates back to databases, Your Honor. Yes.
All right, let me see counsel at the sidebar with court reporter. Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
Very briefly, Mr. Sims, what's the compatibility or the similarity of the system in place at DOJ lab versus the FBI and many other labs in this country?
The main point is that we use the same restriction enzyme, which is called HAE, H-A-E, Roman numeral 3, and also that we use many of the same probes. There's a battery of probes that overlap. And then also we have exchanged samples with the FBI to show that our data is compatible with their data.
Okay, and if you would you contrast the system that you use in the FBI and many other labs with Cellmark's, because the jury's heard quite a bit of Cellmark's approach to RFLP.
Yes, the main difference is that they're using a different restriction enzyme for their analysis, and I believe it's NF1 is their restriction enzyme. And what it basically does is it gives larger DNA restriction fragments, so their stuff tends to be higher up on one of these gels that we look at. And they use I believe two of the probes that they use are the same probes as ours. And then I think there are 3 different ones that they also use. But it's the same fundamental process.
Now, Cellmark has described, Robin Cotton described, a cocktail probe, which is a mixture of their single locus probes. Do you or the FBI use that same sort of cocktail?
We do not, and I do not believe the FBI does.
Okay. Do you have controls built into your RFLP testing to measure how well the test has been performed in any given case?
Yes, we do.
Could you briefly describe the types of controls specifically in the RFLP process that you have and what their function is?
Yes, there are 2 main controls that we run on the RFLP on any particular autorad that you see. One will be what is called a K562 standard. That's a DNA, cell culture DNA, that is run almost, not every lab in the nation, but a lot of laboratories in the nation use that as a standard control. We know where the values should be for the 2 bands or sometimes 1 band that is produced by that particular standard. And so that provides us important information. It tells us that the probing was working correctly, and the sizing information is also checked that way. The second control that I mentioned this a little bit earlier, was that we always run on an RFLP gel. We always run one of these quality control samples, and that is a sample that's unknown to the analyst. And then the analyst goes through and determines what the band sizes are for that particular sample, and then submits that data for review. So that's blind to the analyst.
Okay, and that's, I think you mentioned the supervisor actually looks at what the true values are?
Right.
And if there's a discrepancy between the 2, what happens?
If there's a discrepancy between the 2, we've never had one that I know of where we've mixed up anything. I know in my case, I had one particular sample where one band, a very high band, was slightly off because of a gel problem, and then we rejected that entire data, and I reran the entire experiment.
Okay. If you would, let's talk about how your PCR process works as opposed to the RFLP process. Just give us a little overview. What sort of markers do you use for PCR in the DOJ lab?
Yes. The markers that we use for PCR, first off, would be the DQ alpha marker, and that's the one that has been in perhaps the most widespread use in forensic science. It's got a fairly long history now of usage. Then the
Do you
other,
know when that was first used in this country?
the first case that I'm aware of that was used in was Dr. Blake, who pioneered the use of PCR in forensic science, and that would be in 1986, I believe. It's the People versus Pestanikas. I think it's a Pennsylvania case. I may be wrong on the state.
So you have the DQ alpha marker,
Yes.
and Robin Cotton described the type of process that entails. Do you have an additional the PCR marker?
Yes, the other PCR marker that we have online is called D1S80.
And can you just briefly compare and contrast the method of testing of DQ alpha with D1S80?
Yes, the DQ alpha involves looking at a particular genetic locus that has variation in the DNA sequence, and we can detect that in this typing procedure that we use. So we're actually looking at a little bit of variation in the sequence to detect that polymorphism or different forms. On the other hand, the D1S80 is what is called a length polymorphism. It's somewhat like the RFLP procedure in that the different people have different lengths of this repeated sequence of DNA, but it's detected in a completely different manner than the DQ alpha is.
The jury's heard a great deal of testimony about substrate controls, which we will discuss in a little while. Do you normally process substrate controls through the RFLP process?
No, unless one saw that there was a substantial amount of DNA on the substrate control that could be subjected to RFLP, one would not. They're really for the PCR.
Could you expand on that just a bit more?
Yes, the importance to me of the substrate controls is that provides not only a way of evaluating the substrate that the stain is on, whether it be a sidewalk or whether it be a garment or that sort of thing, but it also provides a way of evaluating how a sample is treated through the entire extraction and testing process. I mean, beginning with the scene, taking it all the way through the initial laboratory examination, and then following it up with the actual testing and typing procedure. And with PCR, one is always on guard for contamination, and that's one way of testing to see whether or not there is some contamination.
Okay, we'll discuss that in a bit. So the substrate controls, if you have them in a given case, are processed through the PCR process from start to finish,
Yes,
and but not normally in the RFLP process.
that's correct.
Can you give us any idea of how frequently you do not see substrate controls in cases?
We generally get them. We generally ask for them from our submitting laboratories. For example, the Bureau of Forensic Services field laboratories will submit substrate controls to us. But at times, in my experience with certain types of evidence, one cannot always get a substrate control.
So they're great if you have them.
Yes.
Are there a variety of ways to extract DNA? I think you mentioned the Kelex extraction process.
Yes, there are a variety of ways to do it. Some of them are just modifications of a theme, but there are different approaches, and people have looked at different ways of doing it.
Which extraction procedure do you use in the DOJ lab?
We use what's called an organic extraction. We actually place the sample into a buffer that contains a soap solution and also an enzyme that chews up protein, and that combination loosens up the DNA and gives you what hopefully will be free DNA, because you have to remember that DNA in the cell has protein wrapped around it, and so you have to free the DNA so that you can work with it, and that's what the extraction process is.
And do you have a separate written protocol that describes the PCR process, the DQ alpha process from start to finish?
Yes, we do.
And yet another separate one for the PCR D1S80 process from start to finish?
Yes, we do.
Are they based on the scientific literature?
Yes, they are.
And are these also commercially produced kits that enable you to do these tests?
Yes, the DQ alpha and the D1S80 are commercially available kits, and we use those.
And are the protocols that you used ones that you've drafted yourselves?
Yes, we look at the protocols that are in existence in the scientific literature, and we make some slight modifications of those.
And do the manufacturers of these products provide something in addition, or something called a user guide?
Yes, they provide a user guide that explains some of the parameters of the kits, how they're used.
Would this be a good time, Judge?
Perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. Please remember all my admonitions to you, and we'll resume in 15 minutes. And Mr. Sims, you can step down.
Back to the answer that the witness gave on time constraints and as to approach. Do you recall that, the
Yes.
question and answer? And I didn't want to draw more attention to it than had already been done, but the problem I have here is that what Mr. Harmon has done is the defense made a number of motions in this case, both before Judge Kennedy and yourself, for splits of the evidence, and splits early, before there was extensive processing by laboratories. Those motions were denied. Additional motions were made with respect to the pacing of the testing. By bringing out the questioning in the way that he's done, and continually pushing with objection sustained, this whole issue of access and everything else, he puts us in the position now where we have to go into something that I thought we had all agreed under 352 is really not for the jury, is a big problem for all of us, and that is to explain to the jury that the defense asked for half the samples, the defense on a number of occasions asked for portions of the samples early, that these requests were denied, that the testing process has gone in all the way through the trial, that there's been limited access, all kinds of things like that, which I thought that we were going to keep out of bounds. And by asking that question about the time constraint in that fashion, he begins to open the door to this problem, puts us in a dilemma. And I
What do you
think,
propose?
well, I'd have to give that some thought. My real proposal is probably some kind of an instruction from the court with respect, some general instruction on this issue. But I would, again, urge that they not be allowed to go back into this whole issue of, I mean, how many times can we do it now? You know, skating on the edge. I think enough is enough. And I think that and he really went over the line there by implicating all these issues of time constraints and explaining all that to the jury.
Well, it was one question and answer.
I understand that, and I tried not to bring undue attention to it, and I did ask for a sidebar, but this is my concern. And I articulated it at the beginning and asked that before these kinds of things came up, that the prosecutor indicate to us he was getting into this area, and I have this abiding concern.
Mr. Harmon,
Yeah,
any necessary response?
Well, there are always necessary responses to Mr. Scheck. You know, how much longer do we have to pretend that those requests for splits were sincere when they never took advantage of them when we were
Mr.
done
Harmon,
with it?
that's not the issue.
Well, it is, because if
No,
we're going to
Mr.
instruct them on anything, I'd...
No, Mr. Harmon, thank you. That's enough. The only issue there was the issue of timing and what kind of time constraints were there. That's really irrelevant at this point. So let's avoid the topic in the future. All right, let's have the jury.
It's not just that. It's this whole question of reanalysis and retesting and
I
what
understand
we
that,
had
counsel.
access to.
I understand. I've indicated to Mr. Harmon, I think it's irrelevant, the timing issues under three. It's also an undue consumption of the court's time to get into who got to do what when.
Yes.
And I indicated we're not going into that.
Well,
All
we're
right?
going to go into this
And I've given
reanalysis
Mr. Harmon
issue
fair
again.
warning now. We're not going into that.
Your Honor, give
Let's
me
have the
fair
jury.
warning about what? He's talking about the
No, I'm
potential
talking
for
about.
reanalysis.
No, we're not going into the timing of who had access to what when.
We're done with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's have the jurors. Stand, please. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. The record should reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Mr. Sims is again on the witness stand undergoing direct examination. And counsel, we're going to break today at 4 o'clock. All right, proceed.
Mr. Sims, just back up a point I may not have clarified. When you opened items, let's say that had bindles in them, and there were initials and letters and dates on them, you noted those in your report.
I noted those in my laboratory notes,
Okay.
yes. And some of those are noted also in the actual lab report.
On RFLP, why don't you use a cocktail like Salmark does?
Well, the cocktail is a useful approach because it gives a very quick answer towards exclusion, for example, and that's a very reasonable thing to do. We just have not adopted that approach. We haven't adopted it in the sense that we haven't evaluated that cocktail fully as to if we were taking all our probes and all the conditions to see how it would work. So we
Cocktail?
just don't use
Did
it.
I hear cocktail?
Okay, now, is your lab also investigating or in the process of implementing other PCR markers other than DQ alpha and D1S80?
Yes, we are.
Sustain. Let's move on.
When your lab performs the PCR process, do you use the requisite positive controls and negative controls?
Yes, we do.
And you also, I believe you said you process the substrate controls in the PCR process as if it was a stain item.
Yes.
And in addition to telling you whether or not there's biological material on the substrate closely associated with the stain, do those substrate controls perform a function, a troubleshooting function when they're typed through the whole PCR process?
Yes, if they come up negative, then that shows that you're not picking up any contamination through the entire process, and that would be from the point of collection all the way through the analysis, the typing.
Okay. And would you classify then, in that context, the substrate controls as a negative control?
Well, I generally think of a negative control as something where we know in advance there's.
Every day we watch OJ, my patience to get to the defense gets thinner and thinner and thinner. It takes a momentous effort for me to sit and wait.
Nothing on the substrate control, you don't specifically know that. But I think for our purposes, you can think of that as a negative control, but it doesn't always come up negative because some substrates have material on them.
Okay. Let's talk about how the Department of Justice reviews all the data in a case like this, a complex case where many samples are typed, and what sort of process is involved in reviewing all the data and writing the report. How many people were actually involved, hands-on, in the actual work in this case?
Of the casework analysts, there were 3 of us.
And who are they?
That would be myself, Renee Montgomery, and Steve Myers.
And Renee Montgomery, does she have some specific expertise in one of these areas?
Yes, she does. She is the person who did almost all the D1S80 work in this case.
In this case. And Mr. Myers, what role did he play in this case?
Mr. Myers has special expertise in the extraction and evaluation of DNA from hair samples. So he performed that analysis. He also did some DQ alpha and D1S80 typing.
And who actually then participated in the report writing process?
That would be the 3 of us. I was the main author. Then I reviewed it and got suggestions and input from Montgomery and Myers. And then finally, that entire package is reviewed by the supervising criminalist, Ken Konzak.
And when you say you reviewed things, did you review things such as the DQ alpha typing strips?
Yes. In other words, we look at the overall results.
Jointly?
Yes.
We're going to get to some auto-reads in just a moment, but I want to ask you a couple of categorical questions about positive controls throughout the entire PCR process. Did the positive controls type the way they should have through all the samples that were tested in this case?
Yes, I believe they did.
And similarly with the negative controls?
Yes, that would be the extraction blanks and also, which is an extraction reagent blank, and also the negative amplification controls. Those were all negative.
When you say they were negative, there was no DNA typing produced as a result of putting them through the whole process?
That's correct.
And the substrate controls, the same question with respect to the substrate controls. Did each and every one of the substrate controls produce no typing result in this case?
That's correct.
Okay, and we'll enumerate them at a later point. You've written 2 reports in this case, is that correct?
Actually, 3.
Or 3.
The first report was a very brief one in last August for the Griffin hearing.
Okay, and then actually 2 reports with substantive results in them?
Yes.
And the material you're going to testify about now is a combination of the results that are reflected in both of those reports?
Yes.
Okay. How many different RFLP gels did you run within those 2 reports?
3.
Okay, and do you have those numbered in some way?
Yes, I do.
And what numbers were they?
The numbers that we give them are, it's a sequential number. It starts with the letters AM for analytical membrane, and in this case the numbers are AM616, AM625, and AM626.
And we'll put some of those autorads up in just a moment, some of those films, but what samples were on AM616? I assume that's the earliest of the 3?
Yes, those would be the 3 reference samples and also the extract of the SOC bloodstain 42A. That's the LAPD Matheson cutout.
That's the cutout GBM 13 or 13A?
Yes, 13A.
And so you had Nicole Brown, reference sample?
Yes.
You had Ronald Goldman's reference sample?
Yes.
And you had the defendant's reference sample?
Yes.
And then you had DNA that you extracted from the little tube that was cut out from the SOC 13A?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you did not do substrate controls because this is an RFLP run?
That's correct.
Were you able to successfully compare the pattern in DOJ 42 or GBM 13A, the cutout from SOC 13, with any of the 3 known samples in this case?
Yes, I was.
How many different probative, in other words, where you were matching or trying to match samples, how many different probative autorads or probes did you use in producing these results?
11.
Okay. Now, we have spent some time, considerable time, going over this case, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
How long would you say?
Well, I think you and I were meeting about once a week since around the start of the new year.
Okay. And we've reviewed all these autorats,
Yes, we have.
and are some clearer than others?
Yes, I would say some of them are clearer than others.
Okay, and we've selected at least a few to show initially, is that correct?
Yes,
And the better ones?
I think so.
And at a later point, we'll show all of them to the jury?
Sure.
Okay, Your Honor, at this time, I'd request to have Mark as People's next in order should be People's 269, and if my count is correct, it's A through I.
All right, 269A through I. Are these auto rats?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Proceed.
I need to correlate numbers because we can't write on here, Your Honor.
Do you need some Post-its or something similar?
There are numbers on here. If we
Right.
can, I'll correlate the numbers on here with the exhibit numbers. Okay, we got A through 9. Mr. Sims, can you check, I want to make sure we have these grouped correctly, which autorads by the A numbers which you've labeled on relate to AM 616? I've got A 1 through 9 and A 20 and 21.
I believe it's easier for me just to look at them because I don't
Sure.
have that separate listing.
I'll hand you what's labeled A 1 through 9.
This entire stack is AM 616.
Okay, and we've skipped A 20 because that's not a probative one in this case.
I'd have to check A20.
That's
Those
that's the
numbers.
monomorphic probe.
Okay.
Wait. Excuse me, Mr. Sims and Mr. Harmon both have the habit of talking at the same time. Let Mr. Harmon finish asking his question before you start to answer. And Mr. Harmon, let him finish answering before you start asking the next question. Please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, does that represent the complete set of probative autorads for this case? For AM 616, I'm
Why don't
sorry.
we just put the autorats for the sock up? Let's just do it.
Proceed.
I believe this is the entire set for 616.
And just to correlate them, Your Honor, 269A would be A1, B would be A2, C would be A3, D would be A4, E would be A5, F would be A6, G would be A7, H would be A8, and I would be A9. Are you with me, Mr. Sims? We're going A1 through A9. Okay. Can we,
I'm so sorry about that. I called the police this. So I bought an RV a couple years ago to have my own food truck off Facebook Marketplace from someone in Ohio, and I got the RV. I went there. I gave them $5,000 cash. I bought the RV. I drove it home. Then I tried to get it registered in Pennsylvania. Well, Pennsylvania is a notary state. So when they signed the title without a notary, I was not able to use it. That title's dead to me. So I told them I need it notarized, and they said, okay, no problem. I mailed them the title back so they could get it notarized and send it back to me, and they never did. Then my Facebook account was banned because I wrote something about a protest in a message. They banned my Facebook account, so I don't have their information anymore. They're gone. I don't know their name. I don't know their number. I don't know their address. I don't know nothing. I never got the title back. So now we have this RV sitting at my niece's house that I cannot get in my name, and the landlord says if she doesn't get rid of it, she's gonna get evicted. Okay, so I called donation places, Cars for Kids. You know, I called scrap yards for free. Come take it. It's yours. It's free. Just take it. Nobody will take it unless there's a title or proof of purchase, which I don't have because it was cash. And then, so I just called the police this morning to try to get rid of it as an abandoned vehicle. That's the best I can do. I don't know what else to do. But that's what I was talking about when I was not muted.
Mr. Sims, we're gonna start with a couple of the ones that we selected that have better clarity. If we would pick,
To strike his
All
leading
right.
and characterization. to
Sustained.
see
Phrase
the
question. Jury should disregard the characterization.
if you would you put up the one that's labeled A3, 269C? Or we'll give that to Jonathan to put up on the Elmo if we could, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Sims, you can step down. All right, this is 269C.
Okay, Mr. Sims, would you get us oriented on what we're seeing there? Describe those things that look like hash marks, if you would, and then we'll do the actual reference samples and the stain in a minute, okay?
Okay. This is an autoradiogram. It's an X-ray film that has the DNA patterns for this particular probing developed on it. What Mr. Harmon described as hash marks, we also call those ladders sometimes. You see that in those 4 lanes. And those are the molecular size standards. In other words, those are the knowns. Those are like the molecular ruler that you're placing on this gel along with the sample so that you can make measurements of the sizes of the bands in the lanes, in the sample lanes.
Okay, could you, from now on, when those are very clear, but could you use the point maker when you're going to point out other things?
Okay.
Okay, let's start in the left-hand lane, inside that left-hand ladder, if you would, and just point to that and tell us what that sample is.
This particular lane, which has 2 bands, this is the upper band, and then there's the lower band. That is the K562 that I spoke of earlier. That's a standard that's used nationwide in laboratories, and we know what the particular sizes of that particular sample are so that we can use that as a quality control measure.
Okay, and the next lane to the right of that single band, what is that?
There's actually 2 bands here, and one of them is weaker on this particular copy than it is on the original. But this is the quality control sample. You can see a band for it here, and then there's a weaker band down in this particular region that appears on this autorad. That's pretty subtle on this overhead, but there is a band in that particular area, and that particular lane represents the quality control sample that I mentioned earlier. In other words, I don't know what the right results are for that particular sample. It went through the entire extraction process. I run it out on this gel. I make sizings of it, and then I submit those results in a blind fashion.
Okay, and that's the QC sample that the supervisor peeks at the list to make sure you got it right?
That's correct, and I believe in this case it was QC 806, but I don't recall exactly the number.
Okay. Now jump over, there's one ladder, and then there are the 3 reference samples, is that correct?
That's correct. The 3 reference samples are in a row. I'll just, I guess, point out where the bands are. The first sample is from Nicole Brown's reference bloodstain extract. The next one is from Ronald Goldman's reference bloodstain extract, and then the next one is from Mr. Simpson, the defendant's reference bloodstain extract. So those are the 3 reference samples that are on this gel.
Okay, now, is this fairly typical when you have 3 unrelated people to have 3 patterns so different from one another?
This is very.
Hold on. What's the objection?
Objection in terms of relevancy and foundation as to what's fairly typical.
Hold on.
It is very typical because these probes have what is called a high degree of discriminating power, and people tend to be different. For example, in this class that I'm taking in my Berkeley program, we took, I think, 10
We've answered the question.
Okay.
Next question.
Have you recently discussed this in your class in Berkeley?
Yes.
Hearsay, sustained. Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so all three of those samples visually to you are clearly different than one another.
Yes, they are.
Is that true?
Yes, they are.
And Robin Cotton described the first step in the evaluation process as a visual examination. Visually, when you saw this autorad, what opinion did you reach with respect to the consistency between Nicole Brown and the sock stain 13A?
I reached the conclusion that there was a visual match.
And let's just talk specifics about this autorad, and we can generalize with the next ones. Do you also do computer sizing in your laboratory?
Yes, we do.
And based on the computer sizing in this case, did your computer, and do you agree that those two samples are consistent from having come from the same source?
Yes, they are.
The two samples are Nicole Brown and the SOC 13A.
Yes,
And they're inconsistent with having come from Ronald Goldman, is that true?
that's correct.
And inconsistent with having come from the defendant,
That's correct.
is that true?
Yes,
And then on the right-hand side, there's another ladder.
that's correct on the outer flank there.
Now, this is from AM 616, and I believe you said there are 9 separate autorads that compare these samples. Is that right?
Yes, for this particular gel.
Okay, could we take a look at A5 now? I'm sorry, could we, would you just put arrows by the SOC 13A, the two-banded pattern, and the pattern of Nicole Brown? And may we capture that, Your Honor, and move on?
Let me redo that.
Not that.
Whoops.
Okay, you've actually identified 2 bands. Are those each 2-banded patterns?
Yes,
And which probe is that from?
I would have to look at the actual autorad to know it because I don't have all the patterns
Okay,
memorized on the
can we
K5
capture that
system.
first and have them- may that be,
That looks like D2S44. But it's all labeled. I mean, as I do these, I
Right.
label them as they come off, so it's at the bottom of the autorad.
okay, can we take a look at the autorad for D5S110, which is labeled A5? Could you put it on screen, please? May we mark the print of autorad A3 for D2S44 269C1?
Yes. All right, Mr. Harmon, which autorad is this?
This is the autorad labeled A5, which represents the probe D5S110.
And this is in your sequence 269E.
This is 269E.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Sims, this is, Robin Cotton explained how a membrane is probed and then stripped off. Another film is put on. This is another film representing the DNA for this probe that comes from the same membranes. Is that true?
I don't mind getting through this, but maybe the witness can testify.
Yes. Pleading.
Sure. Are all of the samples in the same relative positions on this autorad as they were on 269C?
Yes, they are. This is just hitting it with another probe.
Okay, hitting the same membrane with another probe?
That's correct. You strip off the old probe, then you hit it with a new probe and you develop a new film.
Okay. And so the ladders are in the same relative position?
Yes,
And inside the left-hand ladder, that's K562?
yes,
And to the right of that, is that the QC?
yes,
And then once again, in the middle, the same 3 reference samples are in the same relative positions?
yes.
Now, can you simply look at that visually and determine that these 3 unrelated people, Ms. Brown, Mr. Goldman, and Mr. Simpson, are dramatically different than one another at this probe?
Yes, I think they are. I think it's clear.
And visually, were you able to determine whether or not Ms. Brown could be the source of the stain on the sock at 13A?
Yes, I declared that a visual match.
And that Mr. Goldman was not the source of that blood?
Yes, I concluded that.
And Mr. Simpson was not the source of that blood?
Yes,
Could you mark arrows on the Nicole Brown pattern that you determined is consistent with the sock stain 13A? And also the sock stain? And did you follow up your visual examination with a computer sizing of those stains?
Yes, I did.
And did the computer sizing determine that those two samples appear to match one another?
Yes, it did.
May we capture that at
E1,
E1, Your Honor?
269 E1.
269 E1. Next, may we look at the probe labeled A6, which is for the probe D6 S132? Each of these probes is a different marker, is that right?
That's correct. We're looking at a different area of the DNA.
And 269F, the autorad labeled A6, that's another film from the same membrane as the previous two films were from, is that right?
Yes.
And the ladders are in the same position?
Yes.
The K562 is in that first lane inside there?
Yes, it would actually be lane number 2.
Sure. And the QC is to the right of that?
Yes.
And there's another ladder?
Yes.
And then, once again, the 3 reference samples in this case are in the same relative positions?
Yes.
And visually, can you distinguish Nicole Brown from Ronald Goldman from the defendant in this case?
Yes.
My socks never fit. Ever. Ever. They're all made for people with feet this big because, if you get the socks with like the patch at the heel, like the heel is white, the rest of the sock is black. You know what I'm talking about? That is always up my ankle. Unless I buy like little kids ankle socks, which I hate ankle socks. I just don't like them. Like the heel is, the socks are like this big and they stretch. You know what I mean? Socks never fit. They don't make socks that fit feet. Unless you're like, a size 10 man, then they all fit.
And were you able to make a visual determination whether Nicole Brown could be the source of the stain on the sock 13A?
Yes, I did make that determination.
And were you able to exclude Ronald Goldman as the source of that stain?
Yes.
And were you able to exclude the defendant as
I
the
buy
source
the
of
little
that stain?
size 6
Could you put arrows on
socks,
the Nicole Brown pattern that you
but they just,
feel matches the sock on the stain on the sock? May we capture that, Your Honor, and may that be 269F1?
F1.
Mr. Simpson, could you move the cursor barrel up to the front?
Now, Mr. Sims, for purposes of illustrating this to the jury,
if you open a package of size 6, like regular socks, right? And then you get a pack of like the ankle socks, and you put them side by side. The ankle sock is like this big, and it fits fine because it stretches when you put it on. But the size 6 beside it is like this big. Like they are the same size, but completely different sizes if you put them right before. Yeah.
those labels up on the top, those are not actually labels that you produce as part of the laboratory testing, is that true?
That's correct. Those are for court display.
Excuse me?
Those are for court display at the top.
And is that just another transparency that's put over them?
Yes.
Do you actually make records of what sample is in what is in which lane?
Yes.
And is that labeling, is that actually a piece of transparency that's put over the autorad?
The labeling at the top?
Yes.
Yes.
Full sheet of it?
Yes.
And I believe you've already mentioned there are 6 other different RFLP probes or genetic markers for this membrane, is that correct?
Yes.
And we will show them on the light box so the jury can see them with the court's permission probably tomorrow. But to summarize your conclusions or your findings with respect to those other 6 RFLP probes or genetic markers,
Could the witness, and you ask him a question instead of...
Actually, once you have, are you done with him down here?
I'm just going to finish this and start with the next series, Your Honor.
All right.
Did
Proceed.
you I'll withdraw my question, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Did you reach a similar conclusion with the next 6 RFLP probes or genetic markers similar to the one that you reached with the 3 that you've demonstrated so far.
Yes.
And the conclusion was what with respect to those 2 stains?
That Nicole Brown could be the source of that sock on 13A.
The stain on the sock, 13A?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you mentioned that the next membrane is labeled AM625.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And how many autorads are represented, or how many autorads did you produce with respect to that membrane?
I'd have to check my notes on
Would
that.
you do that? But you want to.
There were 8 probes on AM625.
And would you please list those probes for us? Let me ask you a foundational question. We're using the term probes, and we keep using these letters D. Can you explain what the D and the numbers and letters following that mean?
Yes, actually, when we're using these terms D, that describes what is called a locus, and that is the location of where this particular segment is found on the various chromosomes. The probes have names like YNH24, MS1, that sort of thing, that usually describe who found them and what order they found them. It's a more personalized thing. The formal locus is the D, that stands for DNA. We talked about D2S44. 2 means it's on chromosome number 2. S means it's a single locus probe, so in other words, there's only one point in all the genome where this would light up, where the bands would show that variation. And then finally, the 44 is just a number on which it's registered. It's a sequential type of number for the mapping of chromosomes.
You mentioned these things are discovered. Are the discovery and description of these things published in the scientific literature?
Yes, this is a process that goes on before the forensic people even get to them.
And how and why does a lab such as yours select the different probes to use in casework?
The basis for the selection is that we want probes that are of a good strength, good quality, good purity, but most important, we want them that show this tremendous amount of variation. In other words, we're looking at probes that have high degrees of discrimination, and that is that they are capable of distinguishing 2 individuals. And in fact, most of these probes have the capability of excluding about 95% of 2 individuals. 95% of the time, 2 individuals would be shown to be different by these probes.
No foundation for this witness.
Sustained. Answer stricken. Jurors to disregard. No foundation for that.
Is this something that you keep abreast of in the scientific literature, reading about the probes that you use in your casework?
Yes.
For example, are you familiar with the specifics or the qualities or characteristics of the probes that you've described so far?
Yes.
And if you could generalize, what are the characteristics in terms of differences between and among people?
I think that this is foundational in the area of population genetics beyond this
Sustained.
witness.
Need some additional foundation.
How many articles have you read that describe the different characteristics of the probes that are used in this case?
Several. I don't know the exact number.
And from reviewing the scientific literature, are you familiar with the characteristics of the different probes that are used in forensic work?
Yes.
Without being specific to the probes that you use in the case, what characteristics are desirable for use in forensics?
The desirable characteristic is one that is capable of distinguishing among individuals. In other words, a good probe would be a probe that can show a great deal of variation, large differences in band patterns across the population. So that means that 2 people randomly selected would tend to be distinguished by this particular test.
Objection as to, now he's
Oh,
testifying.
excuse me. It's objection foundation.
My apologies.
Overruled.
And based on your review of the literature and your familiarity with the probes that are used in these cases, is it also desirable that most of these probes produce 2-banded patterns?
Yes, it is. That's called the degree of heterozygosity, how often you see 2 bands.
At this point, I'd like to have marked as, or I guess we never got to you listing the probes that are on membrane AM625.
Yes.
Would you do that by A number as well as the
Again,
number of
I would need to look at the A number because those relate to discovery numbers. Can I come down?
Sure. On AM 625.
On AM 625, the loci that were examined were D1S7, D2S44, D4S139, D10S28, D17S79, D7S467, D5S110, and D17S26.
Okay, and was each of these probes selected because,
All right, does Mr. Simpson need to be there because his
No,
voice,
I'm
voice
sorry.
doesn't carry well with his back turned?
good. Were these probes selected because they identify a spot on chromosomes where people differ from one another?
Yes,
The way you described the literature recommends?
yes.
May the next group of probes or autorads, specifically A10, A12, and A13, be marked as 270, A, B, and C?
Yes.
Okay, ready with A10, which would be
270.
270A. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, what samples were on this gel that produced this autorad?
This particular autorad, or this particular gel, AM625, again has the three reference samples on it, Brown, Goldman, and Simpson. Then it's a repeat analysis, or not a repeat, but an additional analysis of the same sock blood stain, 13A. And then finally, it's got a sample on there from the glove that we talked about earlier, and in particular, that was stain G3, and that was from the inside surface back of the ring finger.
Okay, we'll show a board probably tomorrow that shows the exact locations of that, but where was that stain, G3?
It was on the inside surface of the glove on the back of the ring finger.
When you say inside surface, you mean inside out?
That lining, yes.
Lining. And so could you hold up your hand and show the jury as if you were pointing at it from the outside? Okay, you've got your right hand up, the ring finger between the first and second knuckle?
Yes,
Okay,
somewhere up in that area.
okay. Now let's go left to right again and describe what's in the respective lanes. If you would, on the left-hand side is what?
On the very far left, we start with one of these size markers again, that's the ladder. Then lane number 2 is a K562 sample. Then lane number 3 is another quality control sample, another QC sample. Then we get into another, in lane 4, we see another one of the ladder.
Could you come back over here, Mr. Sims?
Sure.
Okay, if you could, just point to the ladder first on the left-hand side, okay. That left ladder, then the two-banded pattern.
And this pattern right here, this lane number 2 is from the K562. Then in this lane, we see another quality control sample.
Okay,
Then another one of these size marker ladders.
okay, and now in the middle again, you have the three reference samples, is
Yes,
that right?
we have Brown, Goldman, and Simpson in those 3 lanes.
These are the same reference samples that were on the first gel for AM616, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and once again, visually, can you distinguish Ms. Brown from Mr. Goldman from the defendant?
Yes, I can on this autorad.
You don't need the computer to do that.
No.
Okay, now, to the right of the 3 reference stains, or the reference sources in this case, is what?
Well, there's one more size marker lane.
Okay,
And then in the next lane, is the sock stain again, the same stain that was on AM 616, the same extract, in fact.
Now, okay, the same extract, that's from the same cutting that Greg Matheson sent you?
Yes,
And it's part of the same extracted DNA?
yes,
And is this an example of what one could do if one retested extracted DNA?
yes,
That's what you did.
yes.
And let's focus on that, and if you would, I'm going to ask you to change colors when we get to the next stain. But visually, did you compare Nicole Brown with the stain on the sock, 13A?
Yes, I did a visual comparison of that sample there in lane 13A with Nicole Brown.
And did you determine that the bands matched?
Yes, they visually match.
And once again, Mr. Goldman was not the source of that stain?
Yes, that's true.
And the defendant was not the source of that stain?
Yes, that's
Is that
true.
Could you put arrows that show the comparison between Nicole Brown and the stain on the sock?
Mr. Harmon, do you want to consider maybe putting the arrows the other direction and on the other side of the lane?
Or how are we going to fit all this in, Mr. Sims?
I
I think you
think,
turn the arrows the other way and put them on the other side of the lane.
On the Nicole Brown lane? Yeah, could you try that?
okay, you,
Okay, and did you follow up your visual examination with the computer sizing of the stain and the reference sample?
yes,
Did you determine that those two samples appear to match?
yes,
Okay, now, you have the stain on the ring finger from, that you've identified as glove G3. Visually, were you able to determine that that stain appeared to match one of the reference samples?
yes, it does.
Now, which one is that?
That would be the sample from Goldman.
From Ronald Goldman?
Yes,
Okay, and did you follow that up with a computer sizing?
yes, I did.
And did that confirm that those two samples appeared to match?
Yes, it
Could
did.
you change colors and put arrows that show the corresponding bands between Ronald Goldman and the glove G3?
Do you want the arrows to go the opposite?
It- Whichever fits.
Okay. We've gone through enough. Oh, I wish we could have made it to the end today because it's better to rip it off like a Band-Aid, but no, we got more tomorrow. We got like 12 more minutes tomorrow. Oh no, he's still there. Okay. My best guess is May 18th we get a new witness. It's my best guess. We are almost at the end of May 16th. We got like 12 more minutes for May 16th. Then we have 2 days of May 17th, and then we get a new witness, I think. I'm guessing though, because I can't see a whole video through a thumbnail, even though I pretend to. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it. I do. This is awesome. I shall see you all again tomorrow. Have a great day, guys. Bye. Oh, if you want to buy a RV, let me know. Thanks.